Messaging on Android is a mess. If you're an iPhone user in the US, you're almost definitely using iMessage. You have no reason not to. It's secure. It has SMS support. It's got a ton of features. I mean, I could go on and on. iMessage just works. But where is Android's perfect messaging app? Let's get this out of the way. The perfect messaging app on Android does not exist. In an ideal world, Apple would just bring iMessage to Android. In fact, Dieter Bohn, executive editor for The Verge, makes a strong moral case for why Apple should do just that. But I'll let him explain.
If there's any company on the planet that's basically willing to stick their middle finger in the air and say, we're going to do the right thing for users, it might be Apple. And so if Apple wants to get on a high horse and talk about defending privacy.
And we believe deeply that everyone has a right to privacy and security.
They need to actually back that up.
To be fair, Dieter made it clear to me that he doesn't think Apple would actually do it. So if there's no iMessage on Android, and there isn't going to be, what do Android users do?
What you have to do on Android is have a folder of apps, and the people that you just have to use whatever the people that talk to you want to use and remember which app is which. And that's sort of it.
And that's the reality of messaging on Android. It's not great. Even trying to decide which apps go in that folder can be tough because there are so many options. I've been testing some of the more popular messaging apps on Android, and while there are apps that excel in one or two key areas, there are none that do everything right. Of the apps I tested, there were two that I always came back to: Android Messages and Textra. They're both fully featured and can do things like share your location, send GIFs, not GIFs. And they both handle group messaging well. While Textra is way more customizable, it doesn't have a web client like Android Messages does. But in the end, there's little difference in their core functionality, and they're both great options. Now here's the problem. Both apps drop the ball on security. They can only send and receive SMS messages, which are unencrypted. If you care at all about the security and privacy of your data, use Signal or WhatsApp. Both of these apps send end-to-end encrypted messages by default, just like iMessage. That means that no one except you and the person you're messaging can access your texts. Now here's the problem. These apps aren't exactly the most convenient. WhatsApp can't send or receive SMS messages, and while Signal can, it defeats the purpose because now you're just sending unencrypted messages again. For these apps to be useful and for their security features to work as intended, you have to convince everyone you know to download and use them, including those iPhone friends who are never going to leave iMessage. Which leads me to my final app. Facebook Messenger is just so convenient. Almost everyone you know has probably already downloaded it, and the app can send and receive SMS. It's bloated with nonsense like Facebook stories and games, but they're easily ignored. The trade-off here is privacy. Facebook scans all messages, images, and links sent through Messenger. The company says it only does it to stop inappropriate content, and that the data is never used for advertising purposes. But I can't help but think of Facebook's privacy scandals. So there you have it, the Android messaging apps that belong in that folder on your phone. Each one will bring you joy and sorrow in its own unique way. It's not exactly the solution Marie Kondo would want, but for now, it's the only one Android has. If you missed the last episode of App Directory, be sure to go back and check that out. I made the case for why you podcast listeners should ditch the Apple Podcast app. And Android users, let me know in the comments what messaging apps you're using. I already have half a dozen. What's a few more? Thanks for watching.